We'll just make YouTube live. Man, the things that I've learned about going live with YouTube over the last couple of years. Yeah, excellent. Looks like we're live. That is great. And YouTube is spinning, and we've got a Periscope audience and LinkedIn as well. So, hey everyone, thanks for joining me. My name's Daryl as a Service Webster. And last week we looked at the Learning Pathways site template, and we installed it together into a demo environment. So if you want to catch that, I do have the previous video sitting on YouTube, my YouTube channel. That's Daryl as a Service, and you can catch that there. But this week it's all about looking at what we are getting out of the box. We just installed it last week, and we went through some of those key things that we could that we had to do to try and install it. We had to have an app catalog available. We had to be signed in with the right accounts. So last week I had a bit of a mix-up where I had set something up with one of the admins, and it was a global admin, but the other one I was trying to demonstrate it with didn't have site permissions at that point, so we quickly flicked over. These sessions, these quick recordings and live streams are going to be quite raw, and hopefully it gives you a sense of what you might go through as you're looking at learning pathways. So we'll just have a quick look at what we are going to explore today. And I want to mention too that up in the top, this will be your top right hand corner, there is a poll if you're joining me via my YouTube channel, which will help you vote and let me know what you'd like to see next time. Right, so we've installed the Learning Pathways site, and at a glance, of course, what you can see is a communication site. If you've been working with SharePoint Online at all for the last year or year and a half, maybe even two, you would have become accustomed to using these communication sites. And as they install and you provision them out of the box as the template, we get this very familiar hero web part, which, yeah, pretty gorgeous looking thing as you want to draw people's attention to certain content. Now, the Learning Pathways template is going to give us a lot of content to give us ideas about what to start with. You could use it directly out of the box and just customize a few things here. So we can look at that a bit later on in other episodes. But I do highly recommend that as part of this journey, we're going to look at what we can do to make this more engaging and feel more like it's part of your organization. So if you're running your intranet on SharePoint Online, then maybe you can bring this into a hub site, for example, and give it the same kind of branding. Maybe you can start bringing in some of your own resources, and we'll look at how we can do that. Just a quick overview again of what the Learning Pathways site is. Should have started from the top of the page. It is a fully customizable SharePoint Online communication site. Of course, that communication site is, well, fully customizable within the bounds of our web parts and what we can do. Easy to provision, as you saw from last week. The easiest way to do that was to go to the SharePoint Provisioning and Practice site, the PNP site. Make sure that you've got the right prerequisites and that you're doing this with the right account to sign in and provision. Once you have provisioned it, you will be able to create your own playlists, and this is really where some of the quite powerful content is that we can build. We'll be able to create content that is from Microsoft and interleave that with content from your own organization, and that's the best practice I've been experiencing with my customers. Around the Microsoft content, it's going to be up to date because what we get out of the box are pointers through to certain topics, certain things that we might need to know to get started or to dive a little deeper, and it's all been driven from the support.office.com site. If we just go in here and just quickly open that up, so you'll be quite familiar with support.office.com. I just want to call out there that it's greatly improved over the years, and I believe that it's definitely a place that you want to send people to learn how to use Microsoft 365. One key reason for that is, are you going to try and keep all your content up to date? Are you going to try and adjust your videos and make sure that your play sheets and various different guides are all going to be as they should be, because the product's always changing. So this is why we want to base our base knowledge and learning content, excuse me, off what Microsoft has already created. They're the ones creating the software, so they'll be able to keep that up to date far better than we will. They know what's coming. So that's where it's based off. And so if we went into the Microsoft Teams content, on support.office.com, you'll go through these different topics and you'll be able to say, right, well, how do we get started with Microsoft Teams? Here's a video and here's some content. You can go through that video and then make your way along that particular series, right? So this is the kind of content that's going to be coming through to our Learning Pathways site. And look, that's really probably one of the most powerful things about this tool. But the other more powerful thing is that it is in SharePoint Online, it is customizable, and we'll be able to look at how we can build in some of the other engaging content for bringing in our people for other reasons. And this is something that I'm going to be covering at Microsoft Ignite in an unconference. And the purpose of an unconference is to try and bring other people together that are also working with the Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways environment, to be able to share what they've learned, what they are working on, and inspire each other with some examples of what they've been creating. So we'll be looking at that, and I will do my best to try and record or share what we learned from that. It is one of those sessions which it's not going to be streamed because it's all about people around tables and sharing what they learn. But what I hope to do is have half of the session where people are going to look at that content and present from their table some of the examples. So let's see if we can bring that in. Anyway, back to today's agenda. Out of the box, we do get this Learning Pathways landing site, which is based off a communication site. And at first glance, you might think, yeah, okay, communication site, where is the Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways stuff? I don't see it. I see a place for news. Now keep your thought open for that, because this could be important. Look, let's just talk about it now. News. We are going to look at this later, and it is a key thing for making this site engaging, and also bringing people in for other reasons to see what is changing or how is the project progressing. Your events web part. So, okay, what can we use that for? We're going to look at that a bit later on. It could be used to try and promote learning events, for drop-in sessions, for live events like this, if you're running it over Yammer, Teams or Stream. So yeah, you might look at this and think, where is Learning Pathways? Our first hint as to where everything is up here in the menus. So if we're hovering over our home menu, we have a link off to the Learning Pathways administration page. We'll have a look at that soon. We see some examples here of content that has been created for us that we might want to use to get started. And it does actually align with some of the ways that Microsoft would like us to try and experience Microsoft 365 if we're rolling stuff out. So we've got some content there for Microsoft Teams. We'll have a look at that soon too, OneDrive and SharePoint. And then there's the Ask and Get Help, right? A page where you can guide people through to where to get help in your organization. Drilling down into training events, which we're seeing that web part there, a short link off to the tech community and a feedback forum. Now it's out of the box, and if you want more control of what your people are seeing, and you don't necessarily want to go off to other places to ask questions and the like, then of course you can change these links. And this is a mega menu too, by the way. This is, if we're hovering over, these are our major headings, and we can drop in. If we just go into our edit mode there, you can see we could have other choices underneath that, which are going to be subtasks, or rather subpages, right? So we get to building that content out later. So that's out of the box in terms of our page and what we're looking at. I do recommend that you follow your site. I did have trouble after I'd made it. I'd forgotten who I'd provisioned this with and which account I was using, but hopefully you won't make the same mistake. Let's have a look quickly at our Learning Administration page. And this is where we start to see what Learning Pathways is all about. On our administration site, we start to see some of the playlists and how they're organized within the site itself. So we'll pause there. I just want to go back and have a look at the structure itself. Let's go back up here. I think we've got this. There we go. So learning pathways components. When we went to the SharePoint provisioning practices page, we set up our learning pathways site with that content. It's actually leveraging a GitHub collection or repository, and this is where the code and the various things are used to try and drive the content. So this is also the same place where we will go back, and we'll do this as another episode, probably early on, maybe 2 or 3 episodes out, where we look at what we need to do to update the version of Learning Pathways, leveraging the app catalog that we have in the background. But that's our structure, our content, and how we're bringing this through. So if we go back to our Learning Pathways administration page, it is this infrastructure that is providing our playlists. So in the background we do have a bunch of content that's already existing, and we're going to look into how we can create our own categories. But at a starting level, we do have the Get Started content. What would we use that for? To try and organize the content that, as it suggests here, maybe we want to create some things that people will experience in Microsoft 365 on their first days. They've just been provisioned, and so what do we want people to to go through and use and do? And with that, this is where it's going to vary, isn't it? Depending on what your organization has chosen to provision, you might want to start in a different order. So we have an example here of a playlist, and whether or not it's visible. Okay, so we could hide it from the content. But as an example of a playlist, it's got various bits of metadata that we'll look at a bit later, and then we've got our assets as well. So example of an asset there is our 6 simple steps for Office 365. It's going off to a support.office.com page, and that's in part of the playlist. So that's drilling down there to see what is in a playlist. The other playlists that we do have available to us, they break it down into products. So if you want to have something on a page that's all about Outlook or Teams or SharePoint, these are all starting points for you to use. And as we look at these over the next episodes of the future, you'll see that there's some content in there which is great and a good place to start, but it may not match the way that your organization works. And from an adoption standpoint, this is where you need to customize the content or create your own playlist so that it matches the way that your people work. So we've got products, we've got scenarios. Great. As an adoption specialist, I do prefer to introduce things to people as scenarios rather than saying, here is SharePoint and here's the 500,000 things that it can do. Let's start with number 1. Look, I've run classes and I've watched people's eyes glass over after the first hour and a half as we go through lots of stuff, and they're already filled with content. But scenarios are all about trying to tailor that content to the way that people work, and introducing that in that way. Now let's we've got categories, we've got technology, so break it down to that way of viewing it, and we will have a look at creating our own playlists and categories here too. Like in our Getting Started category, we can create a subcategory for our own first days, or maybe an onboarding category, which is more than just here's how you use Microsoft 365, but maybe you could use this infrastructure to onboard your people and take them through that playlist. So going to an example of a playlist, what we get out of the box. Again, this is stuff that we could change and use and develop for ourselves. Well, we've got a modern SharePoint page. It is a single column. You've got your header, which is all full and showing off what Teams is all about. And then here's our web part. Right? So this is a web part that we can put into any part of the site. We can deploy the app to different sites that we've got in our infrastructure, and we can use this same capability of exposing playlists of content. our content here, it is exposed in different levels. So here's the full collection of the team's playlists that you can go through, and if we go into Quick Start, then here's our first playlist. You can see the breadcrumb there about where we are in the place of the Learning Pathways Infrastructure, or IA, Information Architecture, and our playlist here, quite simply that we could play that through. It's a video, of course.
Microsoft Teams is a hub for teamwork. It's an app by adding notes,
Teams is all about.
Websites, and apps.
And very wisely, you see a lot of people just using devices and nice icons floating along because they don't want to make this intro video too often. If they based it off the content, Teams is always changing. So it's another reason why we rely on Microsoft resources. But something that's different here, if you saw that page, yeah, there we go. That's that video there. I believe this is actually the same page. This is exposed. The same page is exposed inside your environment, right? So you've got possibilities here where maybe we'll change this page up and we'll have a side column with some comments from people that are using Teams and try and build some success stories and some examples around people, the way that they're using it. I'm just going to pause here and just see if there's any questions in Periscope. There's been a few comments here and there. We'll just jump into LinkedIn Live as well and check that out. Right, yep, no questions there, but a few people are watching live, so that's awesome. Make sure that's muted, that's good. And lastly, we'll check YouTube as well for some comments and questions. All right, yeah, so if you do have questions as we're going, remember if you're joining me via YouTube, then there is a poll in the top right hand corner. It will be there after we've finished the live stream as well. And you can choose of 3 choices there or drop your own comments to say what we should look at next in terms of that. Yeah, that's good. Okay, well, let's continue on. Right, so we've got our team's playlist. The one other way to explore some of these playlists and what's in there, we've got this crazy little hamburger menu. This time there's 4 layers or a bun with some meat and cheese. I don't know. Hamburger menu, as they call them. And we expand that out, we can see the items or the assets within our playlist. So you could jump directly through to collaborate and see that content there. You'll see that as this content is exposed in the playlist or in the in that asset, it is stripped of all of that additional Chrome and extra bits and pieces that we see over here in the support page. We'll look at how we can probably grab some additional pages that are not in the out-of-the-box experience. We can go into support and I'll show you how we can grab other pages that we think might be helpful and useful for our own custom playlists. So that's a playlist. Now the other thing that you're going to probably change is this area here about asking questions and getting help. And it's actually, if you go back to our docs.com site, this is one of the areas that if you're exploring it and you're using the instructions, because we all read instructions before we start playing, right everyone? No, you get into it, you try it out, and then you go and read the instructions. Yeah. But if you're reading things from docs.com, then you'll see this is one of the examples they suggest that you change and you get an experience with what you can edit. Because we don't want people necessarily to go to Microsoft support for help. We want to be able to capture that at our service desk, of course, and know what people are asking, so that we can target our learning and our remediation or our adoption activities as well. So this page is SharePoint Online, and of course we can go and edit. We can change the link in here. We're not going to do all this now. We'll do this a bit later and try and make this a bit more exciting. One thing I do want to say that we'll look at too is that with SharePoint Online, there are comments at the bottom of most pages in a communication site. Maybe they're turned off in some places if you've done so. We're going to look at what we can provide here, which is a bit more engaging and connects to other things in our organisation, to provide conversation alongside content, a place where people can ask their questions, and we can live stream some content. We can also bring in those comments into the IT team that will support them. And this, of course, is Yammer groups. And we're starting to see that as Yammer has been repositioned into the Microsoft environment, that it definitely has a clear place for how to use it. So we'll look at how we can use that in place of these comments, which are just at the bottom of the page, and that's where they will remain. Right, so that's the learning pathways out of the box. For those of you who are still with me online, feel free to drop in some comments there about what you'd like to look at next time. If you're joining me on YouTube, there's that poll in the top right-hand corner for you. And I'll be looking at the comments a bit later in the chat just to see if there's anything that you want to look at. Again, I'll just ask those who are online, who are using Learning Pathways right now? Are you just looking at it? You're early in that journey. Have you installed it from the SharePoint provisioning place, given it a name, and are you starting to create that content? Now, one piece of advice that I'd give is that much like we do with many tools, we might start to just play and build and do, but get your team around you about learning and development kind of approach, learning development team if you've got one, and start to map out what are some of the things that we want people to look at and learn and experience to get the most out of Microsoft 365. You'll work alongside your project team, of course, the IT pros that are helping to implement Microsoft 365, looking at those workloads and when they are being implemented, and work yourself a bit of a plan about what we're going to do and build in terms of content in the Learning Pathways site. So thanks again for joining me. I'm going to attempt to finish this off smoothly, but thank you for joining me on Periscope, on YouTube Live, and yes, even on LinkedIn Live. That was awesome. Thanks to those who are joined there too. And next week, I'll be looking to see what you've had to say about what you'd like to look at next. And if we get a consensus, I guess, or we get some ideas and some inspiration, we might just get into creating our own playlist or creating our own custom assets. So that's probably a suggestion there. For those of you who are coming to Ignite, yeah, you might see this thing in the background. Then do sign up for my unconference. Just look for Daryl Webster and search in the session catalog, and you'll find my unconference there, where we can all get together and talk about learning pathways and what we're doing. Thanks again. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.